If you were born 50 years ago, 500 years ago, or even 5,000 years ago, your path to wealth would be entirely different from today. Society operates under its own rules in every era, and fortunes are built from other sources. From controlling fertile land in the agricultural age, commanding mighty armies in the age of empires, owning global trade routes, or building factories in the industrial era, each reflects one truth. The rules of wealth never stand still. The wealthiest individuals in American and world history share one trait: they saw change before the masses could adapt. They recognized the next wave and leapt in at the perfect moment, when opportunities were still invisible to most. This was true for 19th century US. Industrialists like Andrew Carnegie, late 20th century tech titans like Bill Gates, and today for pioneers in artificial intelligence. At any age, opportunities for wealth always exist, but they are not for everyone. They belong to those willing to learn, observe deeply, and act ahead of the crowd. That's why, instead of clinging to methods that used to work, you must broaden your perspective, understand how the world moves, and be ready to shift your strategy when the times change. That is the only way to avoid being left behind in the game of wealth. Number 1. The agricultural age, 14,000 years ago. Around 14,000 years ago, humanity entered a new chapter, the agricultural age. After hundreds of thousands of years living as nomadic hunter-gatherers, some communities discovered they no longer needed to follow migrating herds or seasonal harvests. They began farming and raising livestock in one fixed location. This historic turning point transformed how people lived and laid the foundation for the first concept of wealth. In this era, wealth wasn't measured in coins or gold, but in control over resources, fertile land, abundant water, healthy livestock, and the number of laborers under your command. You stood at the pinnacle of prosperity if you controlled hundreds of acres of corn, wheat, or barley fields, owned large herds, and had a reliable water supply. Surplus food meant you could feed your family and community, host festivals, and maintain stability, even when other regions faced famine. Imagine a tribal leader along the ancient Mississippi River in what is now the United States. The land was fertile, the rivers winding. He commanded hundreds of workers cultivating corn and barley and oversaw granaries stocked for the harsh winter. With this abundance, he secured his community's survival and could use food as a currency to trade with distant tribes, exchanging grain for precious stones, tools, or pottery. Military strength and territorial defense were also essential to preserving wealth. A full granary was an irresistible target for rival groups. Without the ability to defend it or form strategic alliances, wealth could be lost overnight. Thus, the truly wealthy of the agricultural age were not just skilled managers, they were also strategists and diplomats, capable of balancing power and maintaining peace with their neighbors. Yet, wealth in this era had apparent limitations. Assets were tied to the land, meaning a failed harvest or an invasion could wipe out everything. This was far less flexible than the later opportunities in trade or technology. Most wealth was consumed locally, with little concept of expansion beyond the immediate region. I wouldn't have relied solely on farming if I had lived during this time. I would have diversified, combining agriculture with livestock, crafts, and building trading networks with more distant tribes. Any system that depends on a single resource is fragile, and diversifying would reduce the risk of losing everything to a poor harvest or a border conflict. The enduring lesson from the agricultural age is this: wealth begins with control over core resources. In the past, it was land and water. Today, it may be data, technology, or investment capital. Regardless of the era, the principle holds: those who control the lifeblood of a community, industry, or market hold an unmatched advantage and the ability to sustain wealth over time. The agricultural age was the opening chapter in the long history of humanity's pursuit of prosperity. It reminds us that wealth is not just about money, it's about control, protection, and the vision to nurture a sustainable system. And as history has proven, when the resources change, the rules of wealth change with them. Number 2. The Age of Empires and Conquest, 5,000 years ago. Around 5,000 years ago, humanity entered a radically different era, the Age of Empires and Conquest. After millennia rooted in agriculture, small farming communities evolved into fortified cities, merging or absorbing one another to form early nations. Society became more organized, laws were codified, and power was concentrated in the hands of those who could command armies and expand territory. In this period, wealth no longer came solely from owning vast farmland. It was built primarily on military strength and the capacity to conquer. Those who commanded large, well-equipped armies and mastered strategic warfare could claim land and the people and resources of newly acquired territories. Taxes from the conquered, war spoils, and even forced labor became the primary income streams of the ruling elite. Picture North America thousands of years ago, when powerful tribal confederations like the Iroquois or Mississippian cultures rose to prominence. An ambitious leader could start with a modest domain, then expand by subduing neighboring tribes. Each victory brought more land and a new workforce, people who would farm, build infrastructure, or serve as soldiers. This was the wealth formula of the time. Expand borders equals expand assets. The assets of rulers in this era looked nothing like today's stocks or bank accounts. Instead, they possessed symbols of authority, imposing fortresses, massive granaries, rare weaponry, and luxury goods imported from distant lands. A victorious leader might own stone palaces, jewelry made from precious gems and rare metals, or ceremonial artifacts reserved for the elite. However, this kind of power carried significant risks. Expanding territory meant longer borders to defend and more resources needed to maintain control. Large armies were expensive to feed and supply. Without careful governance, a rebellion or external invasion could erase decades of conquest in weeks. If I had lived during this time, I would not have pursued reckless, conquer-at-all-costs campaigns. Instead, I would have balanced selective conquest with building strategic alliances. Marriages between ruling families, trade agreements, and military partnerships could extend influence without draining resources in endless wars. This approach strengthened political power and created a more stable foundation for lasting prosperity. The greatest lesson from the Age of Empires and Conquest is that wealth often goes hand in hand with political and military power. Controlling both the economy and security gives a near absolute advantage over others. But it also serves as a reminder: power built purely on force can be fragile if not reinforced by internal stability, the rule of law, and the people's loyalty. The imperial era laid the groundwork for many later power structures, from global trade networks to industrial empires. It shows us that in any age, expansion, whether of territory, markets, or technology, remains a key driver of wealth. And the lesson from 5,000 years ago still holds. Lasting prosperity requires the ability to take and the wisdom to keep and protect what you've gained. Number 3. The Age of Trade and Exploration, 15th–18th century. By the 15th century, the world entered a new era of explosive growth, the Age of Trade and Exploration. This was when the map of the world was constantly being redrawn, as daring voyages across oceans opened trade routes never seen before. The discovery of the Americas and the direct connections between Europe, Asia, and Africa gave rise to an early form of a global economy, one where goods, ideas, and power flowed on an unprecedented scale. In this period, wealth was no longer determined by how much land or how many soldiers you commanded. Instead, it depended on your control over valuable trade routes and high-demand goods. Those who managed the shipping lanes mastered the art of buying low and selling high, and could protect their cargo on long, perilous journeys, became the new elite. Colonial America provides a clear example of this shift. In places like Massachusetts and Virginia, shrewd merchants began exporting tobacco, cotton, timber, and salted fish to Europe. In return, they imported luxury items such as fine wine, porcelain, and exquisite fabrics. Some American families, like the Astors, started with the fur trade and quickly reinvested their profits into real estate and banking, laying the foundation for massive fortunes for generations. In this era, business acumen and capital management were the most valuable skills, not military might. You needed to know when to take risks, when to pull back, and how to maintain strong relationships with both customers and powerful partners. Successful merchants were also skilled diplomats. They negotiated with local leaders, colonial governments, and sometimes even pirates to ensure their goods reached their destination safely. However, maritime trade was far from easy. A single voyage could take months, and the risks were immense. Storms, disease, or piracy could destroy an entire shipment. Investing in a cargo meant accepting the possibility of losing everything. But when successful, the profits could multiply, turning an average merchant into a shipping magnate in just a few years. If I had lived in this period, I wouldn't have invested only in goods, but also in trade infrastructure, ports, warehouses, or my fleet of ships. In any age, the one who owns the pipeline that moves value holds a far greater advantage than the one who owns only the product. The key lesson from the age of trade and exploration is that wealth flows along the routes that connect value. In the past, those routes were ocean trade lanes. Today, they might be the internet or global supply chains. Whoever controls the flow of goods or the flow of information will always stand at the center of prosperity. And although the world has changed dramatically since the 15th century, this principle remains as accurate as ever. Number 4, the Industrial Age, 19th, early 20th century. By the 19th century, a powerful wave of change swept away the old models of wealth. This was the Industrial Revolution, when machines, factories, and modern infrastructure replaced manual labor, unleashing a production speed never before seen in history. Wealth was no longer built solely from land ownership or commodity trade. It now came from controlling the means of production. In the United States, this era is inseparable from names that have become legendary. Cornelius Vanderbilt built a railroad empire that connected entire states, turning transportation into the economic arteries of the nation. Andrew Carnegie, a poor immigrant boy, rose to create a steel empire that supplied the material for bridges, skyscrapers, and railways stretching across America. John D. Rockefeller dominated the oil industry through Standard Oil, controlling the national fuel supply. What these titans shared was a relentless drive to scale up and cut costs. They didn't just manufacture goods, they controlled the entire value chain, from raw material extraction to production, transportation, and distribution. This approach, known as vertical integration, allowed them to lower costs, eliminate intermediaries, and maintain an almost unbeatable edge over competitors. The luxuries of the wealthy in this period also reflected the technological leap of the age. They lived in vast mansions with electricity, central heating, and modern lighting. They traveled in private rail cars like mobile hotels, owned some of the first automobiles, and enjoyed innovations like telephones and elevators, luxuries the general public would wait decades to access. However, industrial wealth was far from easy to achieve. This was an era of fierce competition and incomplete rules. Companies used every tactic to crush rivals, slashing prices until competitors went bankrupt, bribing politicians and manipulating markets. Monopolies like Standard Oil and U.S. Steel grew so powerful that the U.S. government intervened with antitrust laws. If I had lived during this time, I would have sought to invest in emerging infrastructure industries, electric power, water systems, or telecommunications sectors with explosive demand and long-term resilience. More importantly, I would have focused on technological innovation to stay ahead before competitors could catch up. The lesson from the industrial age is clear. The greatest fortunes belong to those who don't just participate in a market, but shape and control how that market operates. When you own both the means of production and the infrastructure of distribution, you earn from selling your products and every transaction that flows through your pipeline. And although more than a century has passed, this principle still applies in the modern economy. The only difference is that today's factory might be a network of servers, and the railroads could be the global internet. Number 5, the information age, late 20th century, present. In the latter half of the 20th century, the world entered another revolution, the information revolution. If the industrial age revolved around machines, factories, and railroads, the information age revolves around computers, the internet, and data. For the first time in history, value was no longer tightly bound to tangible, physical assets. It lay in the ability to create, process, and distribute information on a global scale. In the United States, this was the era when technology visionaries replaced industrial tycoons. Bill Gates co-founded Microsoft, turning the Windows operating system into the foundation for hundreds of millions of computers. Steve Jobs and Apple transformed how people interact with technology, from personal computers to smartphones. Jeff Bezos, through Amazon, made e-commerce a daily habit worldwide. Elon Musk pushed further boundaries with Tesla, SpaceX, and clean energy systems. This age's near-infinite scalability of products makes this age unique, with marginal costs approaching zero. A piece of software or an online platform can reach billions without building new factories or hiring thousands of additional workers. Each new user can even strengthen the system thanks to the network effect, which often makes first movers virtually unbeatable. The luxuries of the wealthy in the information age are also different. Beyond owning mansions, yachts, and private jets, they enjoy ultimate freedom of location and time. A tech CEO can run their company from anywhere, a New York penthouse, a California beachfront villa, or even a remote island, as long as there's an internet connection. However, building wealth in the information age is far from easy. Markets shift rapidly, and technology changes within years or sometimes months. A platform at its peak today can be entirely replaced tomorrow without constant innovation. Once dominant names like MySpace, Yahoo, and BlackBerry stand as cautionary tales. If I were living and building a business in this era, I would focus on creating an ecosystem rather than a single product. When you make a platform that people return to daily, you're not just selling a service, you're creating your own digital nation, where every transaction and every piece of data flows through you. The primary lesson from the information age is this: control over information and human attention has become the new source of wealth. Like in the age of trade and exploration, where those controlling sea routes controlled prosperity today, those managing the routes of data and traffic stand at the center of the digital economy. And this principle will only grow more powerful as we enter the next era, the age of artificial intelligence, where information will be processed by humans and understood and applied by machines at an unprecedented scale. Number 6, the age of artificial intelligence, present day. We are living through a historic transition from the information age to the age of artificial intelligence, AI. If data is the oil of the 21st century, AI is the engine that turns that data into value. AI is no longer just a tool that assists with tasks. It is becoming the foundation that reshapes how humans produce, conduct business, and create. In the United States, tech giants like Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, and NVIDIA are engaged in a multi-trillion-dollar arms race to develop the most powerful AI models. The reason is simple. Whoever controls the most advanced AI will control the future. Like in the industrial age, when those who owned railroads or factories controlled markets, today, those who own data, foundational AI models, and computational infrastructure will hold sway over entire industries. Interestingly, success in this era doesn't require you to be a brilliant programmer. Instead, it demands 3 core skills. 1. Systems thinking. connecting multiple tools and processes into a system that delivers continuous value. 2. Creativity, the ability to turn AI technology into products, services, or solutions that people genuinely need. 3. The ability to simplify complex ideas, so you can implement them quickly and convince others to adopt them. AI is creating wealth-building opportunities that have never existed before. A single individual can now run an entire virtual business powered by automation. Customer service chatbots available 24/7, unlimited content creation tools, data analysis systems, and decision-making engines that operate faster than any human. You can launch digital products, distribute them globally, and earn income even while you sleep. However, significant opportunities always come with big challenges. AI evolves so rapidly that a product or skill you have today could be obsolete in 6-12 months. Competition is no longer limited to your country. You're up against rivals from all over the world, all using the same technology. Most importantly, if you don't learn how to work alongside AI, you risk being outpaced by those who do. If I were building in this era, my strategy wouldn't be to chase every AI trend, but to focus on a domain I understand deeply and apply AI to create a unique competitive advantage. Specialization and focus will help you stand firm in a fast-changing tech landscape, while those who try to do everything will be swept away by volatility. The lesson from the age of artificial intelligence is that technology doesn't replace people, but will replace those who don't know how to use it. Just as the industrial age required people to master machines, the AI era requires mastering collaboration with intelligent machines. Those who can harness AI to amplify their capabilities, automate their income, and expand their influence will become the new rich of this age. And this is only the beginning. AI will continue to rewrite the rules of wealth for decades. Number 7. Predicting the future. Looking back through history, each era of wealth has been defined by a dominant force. Land in the agricultural age, armies in the age of empires, trade routes in the age of exploration, factories in the industrial age, data in the information age, and now artificial intelligence in the AI age. This teaches us an important lesson. The path to wealth will always change, but opportunities will always exist for those who move ahead of the wave. So, what might wealth look like in 5, 50, or even 500 years? In the next 5 years, AI will no longer be seen as a new technology, but as a standard tool. The winners will be individuals and businesses integrating AI into every aspect of their operations, automating workflows, optimizing productivity, and creating products or services with near-zero marginal costs that can scale globally. Those who master building passive income systems with AI, from digital content and virtual products to automated services, will have a massive advantage. Some may become wealthy almost overnight, but most will gradually build wealth through systems that quietly generate value daily. In the next 50 years, AI will be as common as electricity or the internet is today. By then, humanity may have entered the next technological wave, perhaps perfect clean energy, extraterrestrial resource extraction, or unprecedented human health control and enhancement. Many experts predict that health and energy will be the most profitable industries. Companies that control longevity, physical regeneration, or limitless clean energy will become humanity's new empires. Human life may also shift heavily toward the digital realm. Work, communication, entertainment, and even parts of our identity could exist primarily in virtual spaces. Predictions become far more uncertain in the next 500 years due to the vast scale of potential change. If humanity continues on its current trajectory, we may enter a post-scarcity society where everyone has abundant access to food, housing, healthcare, and energy thanks to full automation. At that point, wealth may no longer be measured in money, but in access and influence. The wealthiest individuals might live in private virtual realities, travel through space, own planets, or preserve their consciousness for centuries via digital mind storage. This may sound like science fiction, but remember, 500 years ago, the idea of smartphones, cryptocurrencies, or live streaming video from the other side of the world would have been unimaginable. The only certainty is that the wealth of the future will look nothing like what we know today. At any stage of the future, the most critical skill will still be the ability to adapt and learn quickly. Technology will keep rewriting the game's rules, but those who observe closely, experiment early, and apply new tools ahead of the crowd will always have the advantage. Whether it's 5, 50, or 500 years from now, the leaders will be those who embrace change, not those who run from it. Looking back over thousands of years, one truth becomes clear. Wealth is never static. It constantly evolves with the resources, technologies, and rules of its era. From land, armies, and trade routes to factories, data, and now AI, each age has created a new group of winners while leaving behind those who clung to outdated models. The greatest lesson across history is this: investing in yourself is always the highest return investment you can make. With the proper knowledge, skills, and mindset, you will see opportunities earlier and seize them more effectively than anyone else. If you want to keep learning and preparing for the new era, like, subscribe, and share this video so more people can understand the evolutionary journey of wealth. And don't forget to leave a comment. The era I want to conquer is INS, so you can turn thought into commitment into action starting today.